everybody. Very excited to introduce our next guest. We have a wonderful presentation on carbon removal tech through open hardware from Dahl Winters, the CEO at TerraNexum. I'm going to introduce her really quick. I also recommend that you join the Discord. And if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A, which you can find down below. And if there's time, we may get to those. So Dahl Winters is a hands-on scientist and engineer in multiple fields of study pertaining to software and systems engineering for climate tech applications. She is a PhD candidate in systems engineering at Colorado State University, and also the CEO of TerraNexum, former CXO of Deep Science Limited, and a member of the OpenAir Collective, an 800+ member volunteer group dedicated to investigating and promoting open hardware carbon removal. Since late 2020, Dahl has been working with a focus on low-cost distributed carbon removal through open hardware. She co-leads the Cyan initiative with Chris Needle at OpenAir to advance the improvement and broader use of this technology to assist in the remediation of climate change. So much cool stuff. Dahl has won several awards for her work, from Open Innovation Challenges to hackathons, and most recently is a recipient of the OSHWA Trailblazers Fellowship. She has also served as an invited speaker for several conferences and workshops on sustainability and carbon removal, including this one. All right, thank you so much, Dahl, for joining us.
Hello, everyone. My name's Dahl Winters. As you just heard, I'm going to be sharing with you a bit about my background and the projects I've been involved in and where they need to go regarding carbon dioxide removal and the work that the OpenAir Collective and others have done in the past. With me is a first-generation Cyan unit. It's a unit that basically I'm going to show you the operation of, what's been, how it works, how it's been produced, and where it still needs to go in order to make an impact. I'm going to share a few slides with you, and at the goal of today's presentation is to essentially get an understanding for how open hardware is important, how this is critical to advancing the state of carbon removal today, and why that's just necessary to do. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll go through a few slides, and we will then come back with the demo, and then we'll do a few more slides and proceed with questions. So it's definitely a pleasure to be here today and to get to announce this work with you. So title of today's topic, it's on the left. We want to basically accelerate climate progress through encouraging public awareness and open innovation around carbon removal technology. Why carbon removal? That's the first thing we'll get to. What was built in conjunction with myself and the OpenAir Collective, what that led to. And you'll see some of the great things that the OpenAir Collective is now doing. They are the community that has been supporting my efforts and a lot of other efforts over the past 2 years to make carbon dioxide removal happen and to investigate those efforts. And then where we still need to go. So why do we need carbon management? Carbon management is not only carbon capture, utilization, storage, it's also carbon dioxide removal. Both of those are different things. One basically captures the carbon and focuses on how to use it in a very in a cycle that may not incorporate long-term storage. Carbon removal is basically taking that carbon out of the air and storing it, effectively removing it for the long term. These are the 4 things that you can do to tackle climate change. Everyone says you need to reduce your emissions. That is actually the #1 thing that has to happen. We all do that, and I did that for a long time already. I installed solar on my home. I went to a very low meat to no meat diet. I hardly drive, except for recently, because I guess I've been having to go to more meetings. I chose a very nicely south-facing home that I can have passive solar. So you make your lifestyle choices. Then you try to do electrification. If I could buy an electric car, I would, just to do step #2. #3, I already do. But #4, I was trying to figure out, how do I actually do that? Because there's emissions I can't get rid of. The average American emits 18 tons of CO2 every year. And I had gotten myself down to about 9. And there's just no way other than, not using a lot of technology and traveling and such that I could get that down much further. So I was aware of the OpenAir Collective beginning in late 2020. We did an open hardware approach. I kind of brought Cyan through my work on number 4. And then we got together with the University of Michigan with their Global CO2 Initiative. And we were able to take a look at basically what is going on in today's world and what we could help with. We know we need carbon removal tech. Everybody's doing the large scale top-down approach, as you can see on the right. But what about people like yourselves who, you're just individuals? How do you actually make some impact from your current work as an open hardware specialist or an electronics specialist or someone who can put together gadgets or 3D print things? What role can you have? So OpenAir Cyan was the first OSHWA-certified microscale direct air carbon capture unit. You can see it on the right. You go to OSHWA.org, the certification's there. It does 2 things. You mineralize the CO2 in the air, and you pull it out by capturing it into basically in mineralized form. It's the reason why we do open hardware is because it's faster to iterate by crowdsourcing. Everyone can participate. If you have many small units, you can have an equal impact to a larger unit if you do things right. And then there's other things that you can do with that as well, teaching, learning in classes and such. It's open source and open hardware, so you can use it at home or school. The process is on the left, you basically have an input material, and then you have an output material. It's very simple. You can do this by weighing your powder, which is the input material. You apply this conversion factor and you measure the CO2 that gets captured. So a lot of people have done this, lots of college students, university graduate students in the past few years. You get to remove about 2 grams per 10 grams of input material, which is pretty good. It's not the best, but from your standpoint, you're actually removing some CO2. And you can make products from that, like what I've shown on the right there. The OpenAir Collective has actually taken this Cyan unit and made it into something that you can collect output from and go into a 3D printer. It 3D prints filament that's mixed with biochar, other binders, PLA, other things. And they're actually trying to build stuff with this. So you can get calcium hydroxide most anywhere. It's something that is, you can convert it to seashells and eggs, and that is calcium carbonate. That is the output of the calcium hydroxide. It does take a lot of energy to make calcium hydroxide, but there's companies like Brimstone Energy. There's University of California at Los Angeles. There's a lab there headed by Gaurav Sant, who has been working on a non-calcination method. It's very energy efficient. So you can actually remove a good amount of carbon. So now I'm going to launch into our demo, since that's what we're all here for. I want to make sure that during this time, I'm going to close the PowerPoint and then switch over to this unit here. I'm going to walk you through how this unit physically looks, how it operates, just the components that are in there. And as a result of what you're able to see here, you'll learn 4 things. So just keep those in mind. If you're not learning them, you should make sure to ask questions and or save them for the end. Not sure how the questions work here, but you should make sure that you learn about one accessible way to remove CO2 from the air. You'll also want to learn how difficult this task can be and why innovation is critical. That's why, if we've done it all, if it were easy to do, we would have solved climate change by now with this method. It's not, easy to do. It's easy to do at home and to learn, but when you're scaling it up, it can be a little more daunting than that. You will also see how you can personally contribute to such innovation. And just because you can see here that I've built this, obviously you can build it as well. And might you be interested in supporting a larger unit to speed up climate progress? I'll show you some examples of those larger units in a bit. This is, of course, a tiny unit, but we'll have larger ones to show in a bit. So I'm going to stop sharing. I should be back to my video now. And now I will bring up let's see, okay, there we are. So over here, you're able to see it. There's a nice solar panel. The reason why there's a solar panel, this is a 10-watt solar panel, is because I believe that every carbon removal solution, if you're going to build technology, it needs to be run by clean energy. If it's not, if you're using a plug, if you're plugging it in and you're using fossil fuels, which is most likely what you're using, unless you have like a dedicated solar line or you're some kind of storage unit, you're using fossil fuels. And so you're not getting the full impact, and you're having to actually subtract out your emissions that come from the energy used to run this unit, when you could be actually removing carbon, net carbon from the atmosphere. So 10-watt solar panel, I will set this aside and show you the rest of the unit now. So this is very simple. And there's a fan, and the fan takes energy to run. So, but you need that airflow because CO2, the air in the atmosphere, is really only 0.04% of the volume of the air. So as you're breathing in, yeah, your breath has a lot of CO2 in it, but the more like dilute it becomes, like the actual atmosphere, you're really getting like 0.04% of that being like actual CO2. So you got to have the airflow. Otherwise, you're not getting enough CO2 to make a difference. With that, you need a fan. There are some approaches that don't need fans. If you have natural wind, that's totally okay. But if you're going to do this indoors where your CO2 is really high anyhow, because people keep their houses closed and there's not a lot of ventilation, you need the fan. Up here, and there is also, and I'm going to bring this around, just disconnect this. We have 2 batteries in here, and we also have a charge controller. So little charge controller here. I have soldered in some cables. This one goes to the solar panel. This is a diode that you can see here. It's just enough of a diode to handle 10 watts. And the current is, enough to account for. You can account for the current with this diode. You want the current to go in one direction and not back in. So when the energy is flowing, there's no use trying to make energy go the other way. This charge controller has inputs for both solar as well as here is the battery storage, and there's also a load here. So the load goes out to a cigarette lighter. I don't smoke, but these are really handy. Basically, there's a USB input here that you can plug in your items to. So we plug in the fan, which runs on USB. We also plug in any sensors or stuff that we want to hook onto here. OpenAir Collective has actually done a great job in pioneering some of the sensors that can be used. The SCD41 we have used quite a bit. There's also the SCD40, SCD30, or SK30, I believe. I'll have to check that one. But all these instructions, you'll see where the documentation is in a little bit. So inside of this unit, we basically have a chamber, and we also have our 2 batteries on either side. And these are currently lead acid batteries, so you can use lithium ion batteries. But the point is that because we are portable, we need energy storage. Energy storage does cost a lot. And with lithium ion batteries, 80% of our sodium or of our solar power supply does come from China. So there's a real, supply chain dominance there. We're really reliant on China for all the solar that we have. And so we hope they keep supplying it to us. Batteries, lithium takes a lot of rare earth minerals. And so, there's sodium ion batteries, which will hopefully be coming online. But if you use lithium in here, that's a lot of mining and extraction that goes along with that. So it's not really that clean either when you think about it. But we use it because otherwise, there's no energy storage for the night when you want to be running this. Inside here, I don't have anything at the moment in the case, but this is the chamber where we would be doing the carbon removal. So there's also an air pump that goes into here. So the air pump gets plugged into the load side of this. Once the air pump is inserted in here, you can also just close the lid. Air will flow in this whole chamber, And then it's originally designed to just carry a powder, basically. So we have a few little coffee filters and some calcium carbonate powder, or calcium hydroxide powder. You can get this from Mrs. Fields carries pickled lime. You can also use kalkwasser from any aquarium store. Both of those are high purity sources of calcium hydroxide. You load it in here. You then put it into the chamber, which has a spacer at the bottom, which I've taken out for the time being. And then you also have your air pump pumping in with a tube to make sure this gets nicely humidified. And then this chamber does not close, it's actually left open. And then you're able to get your airflow from front to back. And during this whole time, you're capturing carbon. It takes about 12 hours or so to get like your 1.75 to 2 grams of carbon capture for 10 grams of input material of the calcium hydroxide. So now that we've gone through the basic unit components, I'll just backtrack through this again. Your charge controller tells you when the solar panel is on. There's nothing on the screen now, but it tells you your battery voltage as well. And so you can run this all during the day and as well during the night. Renewable energy sources mostly these days are intermittent. There's only a few energy sources which are not. And with solar and wind, they are intermittent, so you need to invest heavily in battery storage or compressed air or something to hold that energy. Pumped hydro is great, but there's always land issues with who can actually build on what portion of whose land, when does it take, how much money would it cost amongst like different people, and therefore it takes a while as well. So what we really want to do is find something that is not intermittent if you can, that doesn't take a lot of time or resources to build. The geothermal is one of those things where it would be really nice to be able to use more of, but it's pretty underutilized. So that's a quick demo. Going back to the slides real quick. And let me actually, oh, I see a question. Wonderful, we got a question. All right, how filament is made with the CO2 captured? Yes, so ABS, we don't use ABS at OpenAir Collective. We're using PLA, and we're also using, there's something made from a resource in Canada. It uses biochar impregnated with PLA, as well as, and we're adding calcium carbonate to that. So that's how those are being done. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. I'm going to go here, and hopefully this will show up. Wonderful. Okay. All right. So we have passed that. Just a few more slides. Next steps. So obviously we need more innovation, because this tiny unit here is not going to do as much now as we need it to get, we're emitting 40 gigatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. Those go out through natural sources, yes, but we still need to remove quite a bit, to correct for the imbalance that we've caused. So to do that, innovation requires funding. Funding requires public support, and public support requires accessible knowledge and the open sharing of ideas and results. So to close up, I'm going to describe to you 5 ways which you can get there, in which you personally can have an impact. So let's see, going down. Number 1, more support for open hardware funding. I'm a member very graciously of the OSHWA Trailblazers Fellowship. My goal this year is, and until spring next year, is to advance open source hardware in academia by focusing on an approach that allows me to case study carbon removal systems for open hardware. There's a link down there, happy to go to that later. I'll also try to share these slides as well, because there's nothing here that I don't want to share. I want everybody to be able to see this work. So that fellowship is allowing me to communicate with others of like mind to make sure that students, universities, and eventually the public as well can learn about this material and can receive funding for the work that you're doing. Number two, competitions and challenges. We need to really look at the Open Hardware Collective's work. I think they've been pioneers in everything that we need to do with small scale open source and open hardware. They have a carbon removal challenge at that link. I encourage you all to go to that and just note that right now. Submissions are open coming up this fall. It's been supported by a number of institutions as well as universities. I promised you a look at higher capacity units, and I want to definitely note this one. Right now, there is a nationwide shortage of CO2. And yes, believe it or not, there is a shortage of CO2 in the United States. Now, I just can't believe it because we're just emitting like crazy. But apparently breweries, anybody else who uses CO2 for their processes, like, if you have bottled CO2 for clean rooms or carbonating beverages or anything, you're really needing to use that. So let me just check real quick because I just want to make sure I have available time. I just heard something. So CarbonX is being deployed by Clean02. You can check in with Jason Cardiff. I'm sure his orders are just overflowing right now. That unit is about a refrigerator size unit, and it's, it hooks up to a building. It doesn't pull CO2 directly from the air, but it reduces your natural gas output of emissions. And so why are you emitting CO2 and paying for your natural gas bill and paying for extra CO2 from companies that produce it from fossil fuel sources when you can capture your own CO2 and recycle that back into your system and make your profits off of that? Just seemed like a pretty good thing to do. Jo Norris is using a cyan-like chemistry in her company Carbon Reform. So if you want to see the next evolution of cyan, go to carbonreform.com. Jo Norris has, she's been doing a great job making her company grow. And Mitsubishi, just, as a general large player, they also have a carbon removal solution out now as well. And then lastly, until we get to the last slide, we really need to deploy carbon removal with clean energy. So that's kind of where I've been focusing on lately. I'm not doing like a really, hardcore engineering anymore in the near term. I'm focusing on how do I integrate everybody's solution together to make sure that we get carbon removal tech underway with clean energy. It's if you're going to deploy cyan with fossil fuels by plugging it in, you're not really harnessing that to its full potential. And we also want there to be baseload power. So we're looking at geothermal and other things we can do to accelerate the energy and carbon transition needed for climate change. And really those were the 4 things I'm doing, but really for you, you just have to take your first step. And that's kind of like the message I want to deliver today. Over the past 2 years, I really started this in November 2020. I've always been, interested in climate and technology and trying to make positive things happen from what I do. But, this shows you what the actual cyan unit looks like without the batteries. Complete system is on the left. You got the powder there. You have the chamber with the air pump on the right. Here's a fan. There's like a power strip back there. That's still about $100. Looking at it from the top, you stick the batteries in there, you won't have as much space, but and the batteries and solar panel cost a little more, but that's where the CO2 goes to get stored. You can see the tubing being wound from the air into here. And then just the essentials. For $20, you can start with the minimum parts to capture CO2. That's all you need on the right, and that's actually been the preferred starting point for a number of universities. So I'll wrap up now. My watch died, so I wasn't actually able to see the time, but hopefully this is around 25 minutes, and if we have time for questions, that's great. Let's make it happen. I like the term climate progress. I know other people like sustainability. Some people don't like to hear the word climate change, but it's happening. There's a lot of people making a difference around that. Europe is like leading the way. And so, we're going to get left in the dust if we don't take our share and, drive progress. So I encourage all of us to visit the link at the left for cyan documentation and instructions, and definitely go to the OpenAir Collective website. OSHWA, as well as what's going on at Hackster. I'll be trying to fill in more details on my Hackster profile in the future. And then if you want to check me out, you can do that as well.
All right. Well, thank you for this session. We are now moving over to our community spotlight session. So if you could please go back to our lobby, join our next session on that link. We are chatting in the Discord channel. So please join bit.ly/Hackster Discord if you do not have the link. If we had any questions come up for Dahl during that session, you can go ahead and head over to the Discord channel and ask some questions there. We'll also record some of those questions for you, Dahl. So if we don't get around to them today in the session, we can reach out back to you and we can post some more stuff after the summit.
Wonderful. It's a pleasure.
All right, take care.
Thanks.